Hi everybody. Now, this is a very important topic as far as business policy and strategic management is concerned. This talks about the rules and regulations. So far, we've been learning various kind of strategies, which we've been studying about the business strategies, the corporate strategies, and we've been learning how organizations are getting successful by following various policies. But now, this is also a very important aspect for any of the organization to run successfully. We've done various things. We've done, various reasons why organizations are successful in terms of business practices. But in order to monitor that these practices are done ethically, these strategies are followed ethically, it is very important that there is a formalized structure, there's a formalized rules, there's formalized policies. And for this, every organization has has a corporate governance. There are set principles, set rules, procedures, which is mandatory for everybody to follow. So this is what we are going to study in corporate governance, and as we proceed further, we will understand what corporate governance is all about. So let's understand what the corporate governance means. Now, we need to understand that whenever we start a new topic, it is very important to understand that what is the relevance of that topic, why we are studying that topic. So, that is what it is written here. The objectives of your learning corporate governance would be that we get to know, we understand why it is used to monitor and control managers' strategic decisions. Now, so far when we were studying business policy and strategic management, we're all aware that people come from different backgrounds, different value systems, different belief systems. So they're all, people coming from different backgrounds. And when they come together, obviously they carry their own mindsets. So there has to be a uniform system. And see, at times, a lot of decisions which the managers take, it is governed by their value systems. So that is why a corporate governance and set is set by the organization, so that there is a uniform system and there is a rationale behind whatever decisions which are taken by the managers. There is a rationale behind it. Then we will be talking about a lot of agency relationship, which I'll be telling you about as we proceed further. I'll be telling you about what is agency relationship and managerial opportunism, and what is their strategic implications. This is just in brief. I'm trying to explain it here, that what we are going to study here in the corporate governance. But as we proceed further, we will be talking about a lot about managerial opportunism and what is this agency relationship, what here the word agency means, what is the principal person. So we're going to study who are the board of directors and how that compensation happens and how these you know their decisions are being monitored. So this is the basic objective of the corporate governance. Now before proceeding further, let's try to understand what is this corporate governance. So it is a relationship among the stakeholders that is used to determine and control the strategic direction and performance of organizations. Now, if you remember that we've all done the various kind of stakeholders, we've done the product stakeholders, we've done the organizational stakeholders, we've done stakeholders in various categories. So I have told you that when we talk about the organizational stakeholders, in the employees are stakeholders. So we did that in details. Now, it is a relationship among the stakeholders. That is what, corporate governance tells about. And what this relationship, how this relationship is going to impact the strategic direction and the performance of organizations. Then it is definitely, it is concerned with identifying ways to ensure that strategic decisions are made more effectively, and it is used in corporate to establish order between the firm owners and its top level managers whose interests may be in conflict. Now, see, we need to understand this, what it means. See, as I told you that the people coming with various backgrounds and various mindsets and all. So sometimes, there is a conflict of opinion, not that anybody is right or wrong, but there is a conflict of opinion, conflict in the decision-making process, conflict in, the way the people want to implement a particular strategy, maybe, how the analysis is being done. So sometimes there is a conflict between these, the various levels, maybe the top level, maybe the ownership. So there's a conflict. So in order to come to a conclusive decision, to decide on a strategy and to implement a strategy successfully, this corporate governance is required. Now, it is very important when we know we've done it that in order to implement any strategy, it is very important that the organization undergoes a detailed analysis. The organization has to do a pest analysis, a SWOT analysis, the BCG matrix analysis we've done. And since you're the strategic and the business policy students, so you know what these kind of analysis are done. Now, when these analyses are done, based on these analysis, based on the market, based on the competition, certain strategies are decided. Now, we all know that, it is, it might be, I'm not saying it's very easy, but it might be a little easy to implement a strategy, but to reverse the strategy. We did a classic example of Maggie and Nestle. These are the smart organizations which have reversed their strategies, despite of facing a lot of opposition from from the competitors, from the the political section. They were facing a lot of opposition, and these were few smart organizations which have reversed their strategies. But it is not an easy job. So this corporate governance is going to ensure that once a strategy is decided, it's going to be implemented in a very effective manner. So that is also one of the very important reason why corporate governance is very important, so that there's less conflict among the people and whenever the strategies are being decided. Because see, a lot of money goes when you do an analysis and when you implement a strategy and introduce it into the market and the customers are aware of it. So it is very difficult to reverse a strategy. So these kind of corporate governance mechanisms are very important. So in this, I just wanted to explain it to you in brief in the definitions that why corporate governance is important. The first thing that strikes a mind, that why should we study corporate governance? So this is one of the important relevance of the corporate governance, which is very important. Then let's talk about the mechanisms, the internal governance mechanisms. Now, let's first understand what's there in front of your screen, and then we'll get into a discussion that what's we're talking about. So let's understand what is this ownership concentration. Okay, so let's try to understand what is this ownership concentration and the board of directors. It is relative amount of stocks which is owned by individuals, shareholders, and institutional investors. Board of directors are responsible for representing the firm's owners by monitoring top-level managers' strategic decisions. Now, let's try to understand that who are these, the board of directors, and what is the relevance of having the board of directors in the organization. Now, what happens is when we talk about shareholders and we talk about stakeholders, I told you that every shareholder is a stakeholder, but every stakeholder is not a shareholder. I hope you understand the difference by now. We know what is the difference between a shareholder and a stakeholder. Now, sometimes we talk about we talk about an organization, and sometimes the top management is not directly involved in the day-to-day functionings of the organizations. They do not come to the organization on a daily basis. They are not involved into a day-to-day functioning, into day-to-day operative functions, I would say. Of course, when it talks about a huge decision, when it talks about a strategic decision, of course, the topmost level and the owners would be responsible, would be taking part in the decision making. But at times, what happens is, the owners, uh, they keep certain people who are going to monitor the decisions which are taken, especially at the executive level. So that is why, I would not say a committee. It would be a board which is being formed, where people may be meeting annually and they will be discussing on various implications, strategic implications, financial implications, which have been implemented by the organization. So that is one basic reason, why these board of directors are kept, because they represent the owners of the organizations. They represent the people who own the organizations, and they're there to monitor that whatever the decisions which are taken at the executive level, at the topmost level, they are they're the correct decisions. They are the correct decisions in terms of ethics, in terms of finance. So they're basically responsible for that. Now then we talk about certain mechanisms. Now let's understand what is this executive compensation. It is the use of salary, the bonus, the long-term incentives to align the manager's interest with the shareholders' interest. Now, see, obviously, when we talk about a shareholder, let's try to understand what is this when we talk about a compensation. What exactly a compensation means? A compensation is something, I'll try it since we're business policy and strategic students. So I will always try to, when I talk to my business students, I definitely try to talk everything in terms of finance, because we need to understand that if at the end of the day the business is not giving you a profit, then it is not a financial viable project. So we look at business with that perspective. We talk about the CSR activities. We talk about the ethical aspects when we talk about a different angle. But when we talk about the business policies and the strategic implications, of course, corporate governance do take part of the do definitely ensure that the social responsibility is followed by the corporates. But let's really right now focus on the financial aspect of the compensation. Now, when we talk about the salary, the bonus, and the long-term incentives which are given to the managers, when we talk about a topmost executive, so they're kind of a compensation which is given to them, which can be, of course, in terms of salary, in terms of bonus, and in terms of long-term incentives. And to be honest, let me tell you, this is all, it is in black and white. It is all documented. It will have a document. If you're an HR student, you will understand that some kind of a percentage every year has to be given as bonus, and that's mandatory. Then there is a salary where you have various. I'm not getting into the different breakups. You have a basic, the dearrents, and the HRA, and the travel, and the medical allowance, and the C allowance. You get into all that kind of allowances. Why? Because you have to ensure that the manager's interest is there. He's working for you. He's making decisions for you. So his interests need to be intact. And everybody, I told you that we here when we talk about business, we're talking in the financial perspective. So when we're talking on the financial perspective, it is very important that when we're talking, so we have to motivate the manager. So this kind of a compensation, a package kind of a given is to them. Market for corporate control, the purchase of a firm that is underperforming relative to its industry rivals in order to improve its strategic competitiveness. These are the mechanisms. These are things which needs to be monitored. For example, if you have an organization which is underperforming and as compared to its rivals, so there will be an emergency meeting which will be called. There will be questioning from the executive levels that why this kind of an underperformance, because the competition is intense, and why the organization is performing, it's not doing great. So these kind of mechanisms are introduced into the organization, and this is what actually is corporate governance. So let's understand this. If you see the kind of the screen in front of you, I'll just read out the screen, and then we're getting into a discussion, and then we'll talk about it. There's the shareholders, then we have the agents, and then they create an agency relationship. So let's understand who are the principals, basically the firm owners, basically the people who own the organizations. Of course, then they are going to hire the agents. Agents, I do not really agree with this term. Agents, I would say, let's call them managers, who are the decision makers. So obviously, the principals who are the owner of the organization, they are going to hire certain managers who are, the decision makers, in various organizations. Now, if you see, the business students should be aware of it. And since, in coming times, and you'll be passing out, you'll be applying for jobs and all. So if you see, initially we used to hear only of maybe a CEO, that is a chief executive officer, or we used to hear about a coup, that is chief operating officer. But now if you see in organizations, we talk about a CTO, that is the chief technical officer. We talk about a CMO, that is a chief marketing officer. We talk about a CHRO, that is chief human resource officer. So you have now in various categories, you have various functional CEOs, and that's a very fantastic way, because you are the chief of a particular specialized function. And a recent change, if you see in the hiring process, especially at the senior level, the people are called as business partners, especially people who are going at a very senior level in the human resource section. They will see that people are now being called as human resource business partners. Why? Because it's a business where everybody will contribute in terms of their specialized functions. Everybody's going to talk about their department and their functionalities and their areas. So everybody is a chief in their specialized, and they are the decision makers. Now, again, this concept of they being just the decision makers is changing because, yes, I definitely agree that strategy has to flow from top to bottom. It is, the strategic decisions are taken always at the top level because there are a lot of financial implications which are required. The budget allocation is required. But I personally feel, and yes, that we all are open for discussion, that whenever an organization uh, uh, gets into a strategy decision, get into a strategy implementation, the feedback they get is they get from the ground level people. They get the feedback because they are in direct interface. Of course, there's a lot of research and analysis in terms of competition, in terms of market. That kind of analysis is done, but 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 the feedback is definitely comes from the bottom level. So it's not, I will, yes, of course the managers are the decision makers, no doubts about it. Yes, because they're sitting at that position. But then I always say that, when a business has to be successful, it has to be a two-way process. It cannot be just a one-way process where, just one section of the organization takes a decision. Yes, they're the decision makers, but it always flows from the bottom level also. Now, then we talk about a relationship. So I hope you understand what is the principle. And again, I'm not using the word agents. I'm calling them managers. So they hire the managers. Then it is a relationship, risk bearing. Obviously, principal who owns the organization has uh, you know the maximum risk. Of course, that is there. But then and then the decision making is done by the managers. Now, there is a problem which comes. Again, the terminology which we've used is here is agency relationship problems. Now, let's understand what these problems can be. Now, let's understand what is this, agency relationship problem. Again, the word that is being used is the agency, which I told you before that I'm not too happy with this word, but okay. So, of course, the principal and the agents have divergent interest in goals. Of course, when a person is at the top level, we've heard so many times. We hear, the CEO is asked to step down, or sometimes the CEO is not happy with the decisions of the top level or the owners, and there's a conflict, and the board of directors getting dissolved. And we've heard, and if you are business students, if you read in newspapers, we hear so many cases like that which is happening. And this basically happens because there is a difference in the interest and the goals. At times, the principal might want something, and the managers, of course, with their own because of their own analysis, they have a different way of running the organization. So sometimes there's a conflict. Again, that is why I told you that these are the reasons why we have corporate governance. So that is one of the reasons the problem arises. We'll come to this. Shareholders lack direct control of large publicly traded corporations. Of course, I told you, since the top when there are times when, again, it varies from organization to organization. I would like to clarify that sometimes, the people who own the organization are very directly involved in the operative functions. They hold a position like a CEO in the organization, and they're very much a part of the operative functions. But it depends. Then managers make decisions that result in the pursuit of goals that conflict with those of the principal. I think it's a repetition of the first point, so we have already done that. It is difficult or expensive for the principal to verify that the agent has behaved appropriately. Now, this is a very behaved properly, uh, yes, at times, when we talk about, say, decisions which are taken by the top management, when we are talking specifically yes, when we're talking about the decisions which we are taking from the top management, which is taking the decisions, it is very important to understand that at times, they are subjective to yes, sometimes the decisions which are taken by the managers, I will not use the word behaved appropriately, but yes, that is very true. That sometimes the interest and the goals they differ. They differ. So sometimes there is so much of conflict, and it is very difficult for the principal, for the owner of the company, and it is again a very expensive process to find out. See, I'll tell you what happens is this is again a part of the corporate governance. Whenever a topmost executive is being hired, sometimes these executives where they're hired, there is a kind of a the privacy clause. There is kind of a bond which they're supposed to sign, which is quite understandable, because of course the topmost management is exposed to various information which is very confidential for the successful running of the organization. So they have to sign a confidentiality clause, and there's a kind of a bond which is of course of very high value, and it has a legal entity. But still, then the people who fall prey to some kind of, I will not say greed, but yes, some kind of an opportunity which is coming up their way, uh, some kind of an opportunity which is coming up the way, and that's why the corporate governance says that you have to find out. There is a clause which is going to be there, the employment clause. So, but yes, it is expensive to monitor how close, I mean, how strong they are linked to the confidentiality clause and how strongly they're adhering to what the organization expects. Now, again, the word agents is not just correct, and we will use the word managers fall prey to the managerial opportunism. Let's understand what managerial opportunism. So let's understand what is, managerial opportunism. Seeking of self-interest with a cunning or a deceit intention. Managerial opportunism is an attitude inclination. Don't worry, I'm going to explain everything. A set of behaviors which is more focused on self-interest. Managerial opportunism prevents the maximization of shareholder wealth, primarily the primary goal of owner principles. Let's understand. So I hope it's quite clear what managerial opportunism is all about. Sometimes what happens when there are people at the topmost level, of course, they are exposed to a lot of confidential information, and they know how important they are for the organizations. Of course, they're very important for the organization. So what happens is they start having their own self-interest. And as I told you, that the market is intense. There's a lot of intense competition. There is a lot of rivalry, and of course, being a part of in some part of my career, I've worked in the corporate, so I understand that the kind of opportunities which come your way, where you definitely you feel that at times I wouldn't say it's a deceitful process, but everybody looks for better opportunities. So at times, I've been working in a corporate. I'm sure you guys will join great corporates. So at times, at one point of your career, you will have an opportunity which is fantastic. And at times, there's certain section of the management where the certain section of the executives which get into their own self-interest, and they start maybe diverting the funds, and the self-interest becomes very important. So again, there is a conflict. There is a conflict between the principals and the managers. So this is what the role of the corporate governance is. That this is the role of the board of directors. That how they are going to monitor, and and see, anybody who hires, especially people at the senior level, you can't make out that this person is not going to is not going to be not going to fall prey to opportunism. We don't know. Sometimes you hire the best of the person from the from the industry, and within 4 or 5 months you get to know that the person has left the organization. And we all understand that when a person leaves from the organization, he just does not leave. He carries with himself his team. That is very important. And especially if a person from the marketing or the sales section leaves, he carries his entire team with him. And then what happens is, if he's carrying the team, of course, the networking and the data, the information, and whenever you hire somebody, you don't know. Even despite there is a legal bond, there is there's kind of a confidentiality clause, but it happens. And then the principles establish governance and control mechanisms. So that is where these principles, again, the owners of the organizations, they develop certain corporate governance, to prevent managerial opportunism. So that is why. Let's talk about the manager's problem, which is again called the agent's the problem of product diversification, increased size, relationship size of a managerial composition, the reduction of managerial employment risk, use of free cash flows. Managers prefer to invest these funds in additional product diversification Shareholders prefer the funds as dividends, so they control how the funds are invested. So these kind of, that's what I was trying to tell you. These kind of problems keep on coming, where people are into conflicts, where these conflicts keep on happening. Especially at an executive level, you want some kind of, because what is the competition. So you would want funds for a particular a particular use or particular product diversification, wherein your shareholder would prefer the funds as dividends. So you and would like to invest it somewhere. And then, the agency cost. Again, the word agency, the sum of incentive costs, monitoring costs, enforcement, individual financials, principles, because government mechanics cannot guarantee total compliance by the agency. Even if there is, this corporate governance, every organization will have governance. We talk about a lot of governance at the government level also. We talk about e-governance. You see, but you cannot, even if there are set rules and procedures, and I would say even if there are set rules and procedures and guidelines, but you can't guarantee, you can't just guarantee that every manager is going to all the you cannot assess all the activities of the managers. You cannot be sure. So yes, despite of having the corporate governance, it is difficult. Again, this is ownership concentration, board of directors. I have told you what is the external mechanism, the purchase of company that is undergoing, relative forming little less. So here I have a small clip which you all can just watch, which just in brief would sum up what corporate governance is all about. So I'm just going to play the clip, and I would request just take a look at this clip, and of course we'll continue with corporate governance more. And I'm free to question. If you have any questions, we can get into. But once you watch this clip, we can get into the question and answer section also. And we have more to corporate governance for sure. Let's understand what is corporate governance.